Hello, I'm Dr. Kim Dwyer, psychologist, business consultant, and author. Today I want to chat a little bit about children's books and why I think they are such a great tool that we have, whether it's as a parent or as a therapist in working with kids. My recently released book, Rocky's Christmas Journey, is one that I'll be using to illustrate what I'm talking about. But almost any children's book usually has some opportunities, always has some opportunities to build some of these key foundational skills, whether it's with a really young child or even what research tells us is that kids benefit from being read to aloud all the way through the middle school years. So it's such a great gift that you can give to children in your lives of reading with them and reading out loud to them. So first off, literacy skills. When we read a book with a child, even from the very youngest child, we're teaching them in, at least in reading in our language, we're teaching them that we start at this side of the book and that we progress by flipping the pages from right to left. Eventually, when they're old enough to start reading along, we're teaching them that we're reading from left to right. So that's a pre-literacy skill, is learning how to hold and handle a book, and that's always oriented the same way. We're also teaching them some things about stories, that stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, which ultimately is teaching them about sequencing. It's going to help them not only as a reader, but also as a speaker when they're relating information to other people, and eventually as a writer. We're also teaching them that there's a connection between the story that they're hearing, the pictures that they're looking at, and the printed language that's on the page. So when they're looking at this picture, and eventually, they're keying into, even if they're not a reader yet, that their parent or their caregiver is reading to them from these symbols that are on the page and increasing their interest in those symbols that make up our language. We're also teaching them to use pictures as a decoding skill, which is a really important decoding skill for young readers and emerging readers. When they're not sure what a word is, they can turn to the picture and see if they can figure out some hints from that picture, take those hints that they've figured out and blend it with some phonological awareness, some knowledge of sound and symbol connection, and start figuring out what those words are, maybe on their own without asking for help. We're also teaching kids about prediction. As the story is unfolding, they're starting to think about the story, especially if it's a story that they've read multiple times, they're knowing what's coming next. So they're starting to predict what happens next and cause and effect and things like that happen in stories. Going beyond reading literacy, we can also look at books as an opportunity to build emotional literacy. And by that, I mean identification of emotions, identification of facial expressions that are attached to emotions, feelings vocabulary, perspective taking, empathy, all those kinds of skills that are helpful and important to people as social creatures that live in a group where they're with other people that have emotions. So some examples of things that we can ask kids that help them with emotional literacy is by looking at a picture and saying, how do you think this character feels in this picture? And what makes you think that that's how they feel? What are the signals that they feel happy or that they feel sad? What are you looking for that helps you identify that? We can also help them with feelings vocabulary. We have, some real basic feelings: happy, sad, mad, scared. And then we have like this whole crayon box full of more elaborate feelings. So we can start talking about, what does excited feel like? What does excited feel like in your body? What does your face look like when you're excited? When this character was excited in the book, how did you know? And what do you think they were feeling in their belly when they felt excited? So there's all kinds of opportunities to talk about feelings vocabulary and really develop that vocabulary. And that helps kids to tell us how they feel. Sometimes those feelings are super big, and if they can nail down a word that shares with the people that they care about, that helps them to feel heard and understood. We can also use books to help with perspective taking. So some of that is similar. How do you think this person feels? What might make them feel that way? That helps a child to be thinking about not just how they would experience a situation, but how somebody else might experience a situation. And sometimes that's different, and we can help them. You might feel happy in that situation, but can you think of any reason that somebody else might feel a little bit scared in that situation? We can also build empathy by, asking them questions that help to identify, even if somebody is feeling differently, how might they be feeling? How might you support them? How might you help them in those kinds of situations? Some other great uses of books are to help establish routine and tradition. So when we think about routine, I often think about sleep and sleep routines. And having a routine of predictable events that happen in a certain sequence before bed helps a child to kind of structure their evening and pick up on all of the cues that they're winding down and getting ready for bed. And reading can be such a great part of that because it's a quiet activity. Child can be in bed, caregiver sitting with them, reading to them. It's calm. If they're books that are read frequently, then there's like that predictability and structure that's also added in. And it just starts to signal the winding down and going to sleep process. We can also use books as part of our traditions. So traditions are super important because they kind of mark the passage of time and the way we celebrate different holidays, different events, different times of year. Can be really special within a family and within a community, and kind of points out that there's things about our life that are special, that are worth celebrating. Holiday books can be such a great part of those traditions, and I personally think Rocky would be a great part for a Christmas story tradition. I have a neighbor who does like an Advent Christmas stories. So every day in December, they read a different book as a family that's kind of holiday oriented. In my family, we have a tradition that we open gifts. We celebrate Christmas. We open gifts Christmas morning, but Christmas Eve, all the time growing up, my kids got a book. And sometimes there are picture books even for the older kids, and we'd write something special on the inside. So the book wasn't just the story, but it was kind of like a memento of Christmas. And going into their own families, eventually they're going to have a nice little collection of mostly holiday themed books or books that we thought were really special to them for one reason or another. That mom and dad have written a special little message to them in each year. Finally, books can be so great to share together because it's social connection. When we sit with a child or even, read with an older child, a middle school age child, or even some people, pass long car trips by reading from young adult novels and taking turns reading or listening to an audiobook. But we're doing it together, and then that's kind of building community. So we can read with a special person. We can read to a special person, for children once they have some reading skills. We can even do that to bridge the gap of space, of geography. If we're not close by, we can get on FaceTime or Zoom or something else like that and share a book together, especially if person on, adult on one side of the country has a copy of the book and child on the other side of the country has the book. Suddenly we have this shared activity. We're both looking at the same material and we're sharing that book together and talking about it. So I just want to point out in my book, towards the back, let me find the right page. So I've got 2 pages that are a little bit more adult geared. I don't know how much of this you can share. It might be reversed. But I have a page that's the kind of the story behind the story. So about Rocky. So my story is the imagined tale of the real owl that was found in the 2020 Rockefeller Christmas tree. So a little bit about the news story about the owl that was found. And then the last page I have in here is a caregiver's guide to Rocky's Christmas journey. And it has some suggested questions that a caregiver reading with a child can ask a child after reading, or frankly read through these and kind of be prompted as you're reading the book to ask the questions where they kind of occur. So for instance, one question is, how do you think Rocky felt when he left his nest, and why might he have felt that way? Another question, if an owl was celebrating Christmas, what kind of gifts do you think they would like? So that's a little bit like taking the story beyond the text. Here's one that's a little bit more related to empathy and critical thinking skills. What could you do if you find a wild animal that is lost or hurt? So I have many more questions in there that kind of look at those kinds of questions and kind of topics to talk about with kids. So that's a little bit that I wanted to share about kind of how my children's book writing kind of fits in the philosophy of my business in general, and can be a tool for not just parents and children, but also therapists working with children to build these really important skills. I'm going to end now, so I hope you guys are having a great day, and I will talk with you soon. Bye.